Okay. All right. One last minute before we start. So you may wanna get close to your tables or computers or screens. Welcome back. So I would say we just wait for Edward to tune back in and then we can get started. All right, here he is. Okay, what do you think, Iraklis and Edward? Are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yes.
Right. Okay, yeah, so I think we can get started. It's 3:10 sharp, even though someone is just joining us, but that's all right. So good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually. Welcome and thanks to all of you for being here today. For those that may not know, I'm Martina, EU Project Manager at EBAN, and I'm very happy to finally see you after we exchanged a couple of emails over the last few days. This roundtable is about the adoption of distributed ledger technologies in financial services. We'll speak about how blockchain can facilitate access to capital and the key success factor for digital finance to boost growth in less developed countries, with an interesting spotlight on why the management of personal data may represent an hurdle. Let me greet our experts today: Edward Valli, General Partner at Accelerate Venture Partners, and Iraklis Paraskakis, Senior Lecturer in the Department of Computer Science in City College and also Research Officer at CERC. Before we start, I would like to remind you that your active contribution to the discussion is strongly encouraged and appreciated. Therefore, just raise your hand or type your name into the chat anytime that you wish to speak up. Now I would just like to leave the floor to Edward Iraklis to start the discussion. So maybe Edward, would you like to start?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I guess most people are probably in Europe, so it's afternoon probably. But for those of you who are not in Europe, good evening or good morning. And thank you for inviting me into this awesome session. Yeah, the thing is that I thought maybe the session should be more interactive-like. So we have been preparing a few questions for the audience to engage in, so we can have a discussion. Your opinion will be much appreciated. So I will probably say a few words about myself and lay the ground for what the digital finance in emerging market means, what are the possibilities, what are the limitations, and also a few words about what are the building blocks to create a solid digital finance ground in emerging markets. And these are inspired by a few reports, among others. McKinsey 2016 have been writing a few words about this. And the inspiration comes, among others, from those sort of reports and our own background. Now I say a little bit about myself. My background is mostly in finance, mostly in trading and investing, but I also have been researching at universities, especially at Copenhagen Business School. I'm based in Denmark. And yeah, I got interested into digital finance and mostly blockchain applications of blockchain and distributed ledgers, yeah, for a few years back. Also, with the emergence of cryptocurrencies, I really jump into this space and try to understand what the heck is going on and how we can use these technologies to further develop yeah, applications and services for mostly people who really need it. So what is digital finance? These are basically services delivered by or the digital infrastructure, including mobile, internet devices, various devices which are connected to internet and so forth, to create a low use of cash and, of course, to slice down the cost of transacting financially between entities, and to basically overrule the traditional bank branches. So this is mostly all about what the digital finance is. The other thing I want to tell you a little bit about is how these sort of means could further develop humankind. I see there is a small mistake there with the 200 billion people. It should say 2 billion people. So financial services basically at the current point of time, at the current state, they are basically failing to meet the needs of large market segments, especially in emerging markets, where you have a lot of people there and a lot of businesses who are lacking the access to credit. And mostly adult people don't have accounts, like basically financial accounts in developing countries, and much of the transaction, huge amount of transaction are happening in cash. So the cashless society, as we probably speak pretty much about invest, is not existing at all in the same pace in the emerging markets. And nonetheless, it's all about saving and investing and creating better ground for individuals to grow and businesses as well. There has been a lot of notion about how inclusion of digital finance can reduce poverty and empower women, especially in emerging markets, and probably help creating stronger institutions and lowering a lot of corruption, which might happen in these sort of economies. The thing that I probably want to point at is that when we are talking about the inclusion of the digital finance, we see that there has been a lot of estimates about how much this could add value, especially the additional productivity, additional investment, a lot of additional working hours, which you can free from like the general way of working at this particular time. With the inclusion of digital finance, you could probably save and release a lot of time to actually help individuals to have some excess working hours. There are estimates of $3.7 trillion in GDP alone in developing countries when the digital finance can be included in everyday life. And in that case, there is a lot of opportunities, there is a lot of job to be created, there is a lot of credit to be given. And in that sense, we could argue that, of course, we don't know what's happening in future. We don't know how emerging markets can take the digital finance, the notion, the theories, the ways digital finance is enrolled in Western countries, how they can actually include in their own everyday life. We don't know anything about that. This is all theories because countries and regions differ from each other, but at least the estimates point in the right direction and says that we can actually enrich these countries by having more financially digital solution to provide it to individuals, especially to small businesses. I guess I want to probably give the ground, like the floor to Iraklis to say a few words about personal data and what are the opportunities and threats in that area.
You're muted, Iraklis.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Google also informed me that I am muted. So I would like also to welcome everybody for joining this session. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation, Martina, and for the organization. Really, what I would like to talk is the new fuel, or rather another fuel of digital finances, which is personal data. As I'm sure most of you may know, from the book of Shoshana Zuboff, Professor Zuboff, who is a professor in MIT and Harvard. She talks about the age of surveillance capitalism, where the main fuel is personal data, where personal data is commodified in such a way that it really is now being auctioned. And she poses an example of where a girl wakes up in the morning and she immediately receives a notification on her mobile phone about a pregnancy test. Why is that? Because apparently the cameras have caught her face, and through machine learning techniques and by comparison with some pictures that we already know, apparently it is known that when women become pregnant, their facial expressions change, and this is one of the changes that the body goes through during pregnancy. So before the girl becomes aware that she's pregnant, people who are able to capture data for us and about us are able to know more things that we know about ourselves. And therefore, immediately she receives an SMS and some kind of notification of products related to pregnancy tests. But even worse, and I say worse in terms of how these things is commodified, immediately the organizations who have access to this data, they start auctioning that data to people who are offering pregnancy tests. They're offering anything related with pregnancy, books, clothes, foods, etc., etc. So immediately this is available to the highest bidder. Okay, and therefore what we see now is really the opportunity that really the opportunity in making some money out of this data. Therefore, that is a good thing and a bad thing, depends on how you see the way that data is being moved around, especially when data is really gathered and collected on issues that sometimes you don't really want to share this kind of data, but nevertheless somehow the data is collected, and therefore. But what we see is an opportunity of monetization, and the point is here I think is where we have the opportunity, and especially through blockchain technologies, we have the ability to create software that we will be able to take control of our data, and therefore we will be able to take control of some of the profits of this monetization. Therefore, not only the organization which is really gathering and processing the data and deducing this kind of results for us, like you are pregnant, or you're about to have a pizza, or you're about to have this and you're about to have that. But we decide whether we're really interested in this data being shared, and if it's been shared, then we want part of that money generation that is being created. And this is really where we are. At the moment, there is some kind of redress and address of this issue. to a certain extent, in Europe, as you may all know, through GDPR. GDPR is a very divisive legislation. For a start, it has created a war that already started back in '95 with data protection, and it continues in an even worse pace with America, because they have a completely two different philosophies, where America believes that if the adult allows these things to happen, then so be it. Europe thinks that there ought to be a level playing field, a framework under which these things happen. And in fact, but nevertheless, everybody realizes the power of personal data, to the extent that about 2 weeks ago or so, the EU Commissioner for Competition, Margrethe Vestager, she announced that they're pushing through for legislation where they're going to force the big players in the field, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and so forth, to share data with people. What we will hopefully will explore later on is that the blockchain technologies, they offer the opportunity for the data to be controlled by the individual, since the individual is the one who is generating the data. It's not the Google or the Facebook that are generating. They're merely just capturing the data. And sometimes they're capturing data that we never meant to be captured. But that's another story altogether. So really, by having total control of the data that you generate, then you also have the ability and the opportunity to monetize data when you want, to whom you want, for as long as you want. So this is really the case. Now, if we go to emerging markets, then we know that emerging countries, I mean, a typical example is Africa, where the telecommunications that is really dominant in those countries is not the ordinary telecommunications as in Europe, like French Telecom or Deutsche Telekom or the Italian Telecom, but rather it is the mobile operators. And as you all know, our mobile devices, which are now extremely powerful, they really contain a lot of data, because effectively we do all our daily work and all our activities are happening, if not 100%, at least 95 to 99% is happening through the mobile devices. Therefore, the mobile operators have access to very, very rich data, and therefore they can really triangulate and use things that we never been able to be aware of. And one thing, and I will give the floor back to Martina or Edward, whereas really what is the challenge there is the fact that the emerging countries do not have any kind of legislation. Sometimes I would say they're not even aware of what is happening with personal data and what are the pros and the cons and the opportunities and the challenges. And I think this is also a huge area that one ought to be aware of if they want to have to play in that area. And I think I'll pass now the floor back to Edward. Edward, I think, yes?
Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Thank you for a very nice description about what are the possibilities and probably limitations in those emerging countries and emerging regions as such to cope with these sort of solutions. So as I start saying a little bit about how digital finance is shaped and how could it be enrolled and how could it add value to developing countries, I also pointed at various building blocks to be deployed in those sort of regions. And as such, there are in general, there are a variety of building blocks, but three of those are very essential. And the first one is how to create a widespread digital infrastructure, which connectivity and digital payment are connected to each other. And as well, we have a well disseminated personal identification system. We know that you have a identification system. For instance, India has been enrolling with some sort of success, like the biometric and chip, biometric identification systems and so forth for various sort of regions. But I don't know into what degree they have been successful. But we know, for instance, from Estonia, they have been pretty successful in that area. So how can we apply these sort of systems to further develop and infuse the digital finance into these regions, especially in emerging markets, which are pretty much in need of having access to various financial services. The other one is creating value-added products. So to what degree can we create products which can provide advantage compared to existing products in furthering the digital solutions and basically deploying those into a crowd in emerging markets. And lastly, how we can create, as you also mentioned, Arakis, that how we can create a sort of regulation environment, probably a risk proportionate regulation environment to create stability and lowering the level of level of corruption, and at the same time furthering opening the market to create sorts of innovation for the participants. So when it's said, and back to what I start saying about this session, we will appreciate to have you engage in the discussion. So I've been preparing a few questions. So Martina, if you can go further to the next slide. The first theme is basically all about the widespread use of digital infrastructure, particularly within the field of DLTs, like distributed ledger technologies. So, and the discussion points, I've been creating a couple of questions you can freely choose between. And as Martina said, you can either raise your hand, and probably better to write your name in chat to give your opinion about these discussion points, which the first one is all about to what degree we can create a digital connectivity and robust payment infrastructure to fuel the growth in the emerging market. The other one is how can a well-disseminated personal identification system create a good and solid platform to boost digital finance solution in developing countries. So go ahead and please contribute to the discussion. We'll appreciate those. So any names yet? Let's see.
Not yet any names, but I would say that if any, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Jara, go for it.
Hi everyone. I would like to share one case I experienced in South Africa. So it was not in India, but it was in South Africa. And I was quite impressed how digital they are and how they adopt the digital payments and digital finance very quickly, because they had not legacy before. So it was a case in townships, like the woman there, they had always iPads. So they were creating their own garments and their own products to sell. They were taking pictures with the iPads and send them to the community. Okay, I'm selling this, who wants it? And then they were paying through mobile apps for digital payment. And it was because they believe that everyone has to pay for something. Nothing is for free. So they have the mindset of cost and payments and finance very, very into the culture. And for them, it was very easy to get all the money inside the mobile phone, using all the payments directly in the mobile phone, with no cash and with not credit cards or cards or whatsoever. And for me, that was super surprising how everybody was paying with a mobile phone. So they was increasing the opportunities to business to create any kind of business for whatever reason and make money. So that was very, very powerful to see this. And in the term of blockchain, I think it's very important the UX, so the interface for the user. It has to be super easy to use. So in the case if the has to be like seamless, you know, like it's not complicated blockchain technology, but you see an interface is very easy to use. And even maybe they know that it's behind blockchain, but maybe they don't know. But it's very important for the usage and adoption of the technology, like it has to be very easy, the interface.
That's an awesome example, because the thing is that this is actually saying a lot about how much mobile technology is well used in emerging markets. And I've been reading somewhere that 80% of people, they have a handheld mobile phone, while their bank account is like only half of the people, they have actually a solid bank account where they can deposit and get the credit. So there is definitely a lack of probably a dissonance, I will say. There's a lack of solutions there, especially as you are pointing at solutions which are easy to use. Doesn't matter which sort of technology is fueling that in the backbone behind the scene, but it should be something which is very well designed and easy to use for the public. The good thing with the DLTs and probably those sort of technologies are that they are created as trustless technologies, which means that they can probably, at the same time, they can lower fraction costs. They can also create a sort of trusting environment. So especially you can cope with various sorts of probably misuse of these systems, especially in financial system. You have a lot of misuse, corruptions, and so forth. It could be beneficial to use these sort of technologies in the backbone. And that's also something we would like you to comment a little bit about. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the DLTs and distributed ledger technologies and blockchain and so forth. We would appreciate your comments on those and how we can use these sort of technologies to fuel the creation of a solid digital infrastructure. Anybody else who want to say a few words? We will appreciate, of course. I don't know, Irakis, do you have a comment about this, especially from the personal identification systems and the problem that you have been pointing at?
You're also muted again.
Sorry.
No worries.
This time Google wasn't fast enough to warn me that I'm muted. The only thing that I would like to point out here about blockchain or DLT technologies is the uniqueness in transparency and the uniqueness in repudiation, i.e., once something has been done, then it is impossible to deny that you have committed something, whether that is a transaction, an agreement, or whatever. And this is really why blockchain is such a powerful tool, in my opinion, when it comes into the usage and the whole handling of personal data. Because what is extremely extremely important here is to have technologies that we know who is accessing this kind of technology, this kind of data, at what exactly is that they are doing, whether they are performing what has been agreed upon, or whether they are performing other kind of processes. Because really, you know, you go to the supermarket and you think that you're providing data only regarding the more efficient operation of the supermarket. But effectively, as I'm sure you all know, we all provide data about our health. And therefore, the companies know when we are going to die, statistically that is, when we're going to have a cancer, and we're going to have this or that or the other, based on what kind of food we buy and we consume. Therefore, if you buy a lot of fatty foods, then we know that by the age of 40, you will have a lot of your arteries be clogged because of the butter and the fat and so forth. Whereas if you buy lean meat, then you know that you will go a little bit further as far as the arteries goes. But if it's red, then you will go for a cancer or whatever, based on statistics, which exactly now we know, for better or for worse, really no. Now, therefore, this data exists, this data is there, this data has been operated. And therefore, as I said, through blockchain, if we control the data, because this is a basic premise, the basic premise is that the data is reverted to us, to the individuals, to the data subjects. And therefore, we control the data, not the data controller, not the supermarket X or the supermarket chain Y. But once we have it, then through blockchain technology, we're able to control who performs what kind of process on that data. And therefore, we're able to control if they will deduce when we will die or not. We can remove data that we think is not to our advantage or for whatever reason. Something that cannot happen at the moment. At the moment, the data controller is forced by law not to touch data. Data has to be as exactly as it was originally created. Otherwise, it is manipulation, which they are not allowed to do. But if we own the data, then we can hide parts of it which we think is harmful to us. Because at the moment, yes, the legislation allows you to ask them not to perform activities which will be harmful to you, but then what is harmful? I mean, how do you define harmful? What you define harmful for another person is perfectly okay. So it is impossible to have a definition on how this happens. And the other thing that is extremely important on digital finance is that things ought to happen automatically. And this is where smart contracts really could potentially play a role, where you define certain criteria under which a transaction can occur. If these criteria are met, then automatically a smart contract is enabled, and that will provide you with all the obligations and financial rewards that you are after. And of course, if is really and therefore what is extremely important is that we facilitate and we enable these kind of technologies, but we need to be aware of also the potential issues and aspects of it. And I think we can move to the second theme. I already covered it in a way.
Ambre has a raised her hand, so please go ahead.
I apologize.
No,
I probably, before we go further to Ambre, I have a question for you, Iraklis.
Yes.
We know that any sort of DLT system can include and should include some sort of oracle, probably a person or a group of people who can actually intervene in the way the blocks of information are created and actually play around a little bit with those. Of course, it should be in a democratic way and with the voting, and they have to have license for it and everything, you know, as we used to have in a good solid system. But when we are talking about emerging market, when do you think these groups or people should be placed? Do you think that they like? What I'm trying to ask you is, what is your opinion about creating a system, a DLT system, to benefit digital finance? And where do we have the headquarters for that? Who is going to be in charge? Are we going to provide it from the Western countries to African countries? Or, for instance, if this is the thing that we are focusing on, or are we going to have a unit in Africa to make sure that they can actually get engaged and create a governance structure around the DLTs they have? What do you think?
This is a very good question, and an extremely tough question, if I may say so. Tough question in the sense that ideally it should be a bottom-up approach. Really, it should come from the individuals who care about their work, their data, their daily operations, their daily activities, and therefore they really ought to seek ways of preserving some kind of individualism and some kind of privacy. And therefore, in that sense, it really ought to start really from within the countries where you want to apply. If you really try to impose, and I say impose inverted commas because it doesn't really, I mean, even if you offer it in an extremely good motivational basis, it is still, to me, it is still an imposition, because you are really trying to force upon a solution for which people don't see the need. And therefore, they will find extremely difficult, in my opinion, to apply and really take full advantage of this kind of issues. So, for example, you can take even the young people in the Western society who they are not as aware of privacy, nor do they seem to be bothered as much about privacy as opposed to my age. I'm 56 and beyond me, people who are older than me, who they have experienced wars, they have experienced tricky situations, political turmoils and stuff like that, where they have seen data about their beliefs, personal beliefs, political beliefs, religious beliefs, being exploited and used against them. Therefore, they're much more sensitive to privacy. Whereas, as I said, the young generation of people, they very easily will go on Facebook and they will write the story of their life, and they will post and everything on Instagram, on any kind of social media, and so forth. Okay, therefore, for these people, it is extremely difficult, even in Western societies, to have a solution that is been offered to them, because it will not be taken up. The same goes for the emerging countries. And therefore, I think that there ought to be a kind of I wouldn't say education, but exposition of the opportunities and the threats. And therefore, once they become aware, then they will decide which way they want to go, because they may want to go the American model. The American model is, as long as I allow myself for this data to be gathered, then I agree. Although I would say that really, in certain circumstances, you don't have much of an option. So, for example, when you go to the supermarket, by default, it's full of CCTV cameras. Or any place now is full of CCTV cameras. The roads are full of CCTV cameras. Therefore, all your movements to perform your daily life and your daily activities are being watched, and they are being processed, for better or for worse. On top of that, we have governments in the EU who are really acting in a very peculiar way, because, as you may know, all the operators, the ISP operators, the ones who supply internet to us, they are forced, and the telecom operators, they are forced by law to record all activities and keep it for 5 years, in case we're involved in any kind of terrorist activities or criminal activities. Okay, which to me, this is really beyond what a democratic country would ever allow its citizens to be subject to. But this is the government, and that is why what I also I put a label. It is time, by this activity of us taking back data, is we in a way take back control, a little bit of control. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, just a brief comment about this. Of course, there are differences within any region, so it's not that black and white. Say, okay, emerging countries are these, and not emerging countries are that, and so forth. And we know that even though in some very like poor countries probably, and countries without most of the infrastructure that you have in much more developed countries, you can actually find awesome solutions. And there are examples in PASA, for instance, there are examples of good solutions, digital solutions in even though emerging countries. And so it's not that black and white. Of course, we can see good solutions, good regions with a good control over their governance. So the thing is that there are a lot of nuances of how we can apply these solutions. And I think we should look at regions and countries individually and treat them for themselves as they are. And when we are trying to enter either as investor, professional person, even though a company, we should understand the region and know what are the probabilities and possibilities to enter with good solutions and probably either invest or create good products. Sorry, there was another comment, I guess. Yes.
I would like to comment in one point, like in your first question about how to do it, you know, in the sense of how the involvement of the countries. If we are designing technology from Europe with our perspective, how the others will use it, then it will be a failure directly, or they will not use it, even if we spend the budget to go and development and deploy the technology there. I think always has to create the technology in co-creation with them on site. So in your question, if we need a team there, of course we need a team there, engage, and we have to listen to them and understand what exactly they need and how we can apply the technology we have for their needs. And as well, sometimes, because we have the digital consultants working in Africa, and they see this problem again and again and again and again. Like, you are building there a new technology from European or American perspective. You go there, you spend the project, and then when you are gone, it's gone because it was not a match of the technology with their needs or how they are living. So the point to co-design with them is very important, and to make them responsible, to feel that like they have to feel responsibility to use it as is a benefit for them, you know, like they have to believe in what they are doing. And I think this perspective is very important to take into account in any kind of projects, digitalization of emerging countries.
Good point. All right, thank you.
Yeah, can we have Ambre contributing maybe, since she's being like this for a while now?
Sure.
Please go ahead, Ambre.
I was just unmuting. Thank you, Martina. I really enjoyed this kind of conversation. I'm Amber from the Sparkling Agency. We had a lot of hackathons last year around DLTs, blockchains, and all these new technologies. And there's one of them that was actually with France and Syntec Numérique. And one of the things about blockchain, it's not just about us becoming owner of our own data, which actually would be nice, because maybe it would allow us actually to earn money from our birth, since there is already money that is made from our data that we don't even have any ownership on. The thing with blockchain is that it really pushes all the entities that are in the ecosystem to have good governance and to be transparent in the way they work, which is really not the case at the moment. And for example, when we see like the low speed of the processes, even like in France, for example, we're not even talking, I don't want to say Africa, but if I compare, let's say, for Tunisia, because I'm also from there, even in France, when we see how things work, if we move to blockchain, it will push people to be transparent. So it means that whatever used to take 3 weeks to be done would need to be done in 30 minutes. And they are not ready for that. So it would need some time to get there. because the infrastructure is not yet made for that. And I think it's going to be amazing. Why? Because if we say on blockchain, for example, I open my data set and I decide that I want to share my personal ID with the national security system, with the passport, with the health authorities, with 2, 3, 4, whatever things that I chose. That's it. I just do it once. I give one authorization and then I'm free. I don't have any headache to go back and just send another paper and do this and do that. And the infrastructure is not yet there yet. So yeah, this is what I wanted to contribute with. And I'm looking forward to blockchain, but I know that we're still very far from it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess we can rush to
I
next
think so.
theme, since we only have 1 hour or so.
Yeah,
right?
we have some 15 minutes more, I would say, 10 minutes.
Probably we can go to the next theme, which is actually, this one is pretty important. So we can talk a little bit about this. It's all about solutions. It's all about how we can create value-added products and services into digital finance space, and to what degree we can use DLTs, and if there is any disadvantage of using these sort of technologies in emerging market, could be great to pinpoint those. So first of all, we want to know a little bit about your opinion on to what extent innovative solutions, digital solutions and product can offer a true value added in cost and utility. And the other one is, what is your opinion of probable disadvantage of using DLTs in emerging countries? I know that you also just pointed at the implementation and infrastructure. Is it slow? Is it fast? What can we do to make it even more faster? How we can contribute from our standpoint to those processes, whoever we are, investors, company owner, users. And also it could be nice to point at the issue of the relationship between digital money and personal data. So the floor is yours. Please either raise your hand or type your name. So let's have your opinion about these few points.
Let's maybe just keep this in 5 minutes, maybe, so that we can have 5 minutes on the next topic, and then actually our time is over.
We try.
Unlikely. Yeah, let's try.
I know, Iraklis, you have a few points about the digital money and personal data.
In a way, I think we have mostly touched upon these issues with the discussion before, because we talked about digital products which are based on blockchain technologies, which will allow certain utilities and certain facilities to occur. But if I just take 1 minute to take the point that Ambre made, which is extremely important in my opinion, about the governments, that yes, it will force transparency, and this is something that the governments do not want primarily to happen. We know that the worst offenders when it comes to personal data are the governments, because they have access to data that we're not supposed to. But anyway, because they legislate at will, and therefore they cover their backs through that way. And in a system where you have control, really, then this will be, in theory, difficult for them to invade. Now, I think the disadvantages of DLTs can only be for example, this is very hypothetical. As you all may have heard, the European Central Bank is extremely keen to introduce their own digital coin. Yes, and therefore that means, for example, in emerging countries, one problem that more or less is always associated with them is the fluctuation of their currency. Their currency is not steady. It goes up and down like a yo-yo sometimes. And therefore, people are very, very keen to export their local currency into something more, to a more stable currency, like dollar or the yen or the euro or whatever. Okay, now currency controls, which means that you have to have a bag that somehow you have to smuggle it out of the country and exchange your money in another country. This is no longer, if a digital currency from, let's say, the European Central Bank exists, it will make it very, very easy, and therefore it will cripple potentially local economies, because they will be able to convert all their savings into a currency which is much more stable than their own currency. So in that sense, the stronger currencies will have a negative, potentially, influence on the local economies. Maybe not on the individuals, but the economy. So I really don't have any strong further thoughts about this, but I can see this as a potential issue if digital currencies from states are being issued, and this is not happening across.
Well, what do you think? That's a very good point. So something we have been discussing with my partners and people I meet in this regard is to what degree we should promote and engage private sector to actually implement and conduct activities in creating either digital currencies, or even though creating a self-governed sort of system to safeguard private data. So what is your opinion about that? So when we are thinking about emerging markets, do you think, to what degree do you think that government should play a role compared to private sector? I hope not. It was a hard question.
In theory, I'm always in favor that the government ought to play a role. However, I will put a condition: it has to be an honest role, and this is something that I think the governments are not always playing an honest role. Sometimes they play very dirty. And this is where, and they cover behind some legitimization that they perform through, like, as I said, introduction of legislation, etc., to cover their tracks. So I'm not so sure, really. I honestly don't have an opinion on that, because on some issues, I think the governments ought to intervene. On some other issues, I think the governments should not, and they should allow the competition to develop and prevail. But so I know I'm not answering your question, but I don't have a definitive answer one way or another. It all depends.
All right, thank you. One thing we have been thinking about was in more developed countries, we probably have some systems which are at this current point of time, as we speak, functioning pretty well, like GDPR or something like that. And then we have international trade. Do you think, to make it easier, do you think that developed countries, they have an obligation of imposing sort of solutions, or probably some sort of ways of negotiation with like emerging countries, and saying, you know what, if you don't play by the rules, then we can exclude you from the international trade? Which means if you, for instance, impose too much of like breach in privacy or whatever, then it could be difficult for you to actually engage in international trade. Would it be a way to actually safeguard and give the opportunity, or probably create a ground for both governments and private sector in emerging countries to create better solutions for individuals?
I think very much so. I agree with what you're saying, that the more developed countries, for better or for worse, they have a higher, potentially a higher level of sensitivity. They're much more sensitive because they have been educated for such a long time about these issues, and therefore there is a much more awareness, and therefore people can easily, if things are explained to them, they can easily understand and see the potential side effects, for better or for worse. Yes, and therefore they can decide whether they go one way or another. And yes, I think right now they are, with GDPR, we have seen some kind of implementation of this kind of exercise. For example, the French commissioner imposed over 180 million, or was it 300 million to Google as a fine because they were not performing according to certain activities. The UK commissioner imposed 180 million pounds fine to the British Airways for not securing their website, and therefore it was hacked and data was stolen from them. So yes, there are some mechanisms which perform what you call exclusion. You know, if you don't perform by the rules, then we will either exclude you, or through the fines, will make your life very, very difficult. Whether this can be imposed on emerging economies, this is not necessarily the case, because primarily this is not understood necessarily by the people all the time. I mean, you know, education and awareness is extremely important, and it takes time before these things happen. I'm not trying to make any, you know, to be misunderstood. I don't want to be misunderstood here, but it has taken years and years for Europe to reach the level that we are at the moment, whatever that is. Whether it's good or bad, that's another matter. But so really it will take quite some time for the others to become aware and to appreciate the power of data. And really, even in Europe, we're just beginning to become aware of the power of data. That's why we give it so easily.
Thank you. I guess we can go to the next team, which is all about using technologies to create a dynamic financial service market. And by financial service market, I don't mean only a capital market as such, but a financial service provider market. We know, for instance, that there are companies which are engaged in entire know your customer applications and so forth. Some are working very well, some are not working at all. So those services in a market where you try to include financial digital solutions into emerging market might be very important. So the couple of discussion points here are, first of all, how can a risk proportionate regulation create a stable financial system in these emerging countries? And the other one is how can an open market foster innovation? Basically, by this we mean that if you are opening up the market to new solutions and applications, of course, with good set of governance and regulation, how can it foster more innovation in these countries? So please contribute with your points. We will appreciate those, so everybody can get a good sense of your opinion, of course. Anybody who wants to contribute here a little bit? So probably I can say a few words in regard with the personal identification systems. Again, back to KYC. I don't know, Iraklis, have you been working with the KYC systems for like know your customer systems and so forth in regard with the personal identification systems?
Which ones do you have in mind? Sorry, I didn't.
So what I'm trying to say is that some of the solutions which are value adding into this environment are pretty much all about understanding who you are dealing with. So suppose that people want to invest or trade goods and services, even the financial products. So for companies, for many companies, and of course for providers, it's very important to have a good solid system in place to understand who they are dealing with. In that case, as I'm aware, one of the difficulties, since you don't have much of identification system in emerging market, that's probably hurdle. That's probably a difficult thing to go ahead with. So do you have any experience with emerging market and enrollment of KYC system or any sort of personal identification system?
No.
And we know in Western countries, these are very much like widespread. For instance, at this current point of time, in many countries, as we are dealing with coronavirus, you have apps which are tracking people. Even people, they are pretty much suspicious about using those apps because of personal data and the way, and this is in the healthcare area. But if you compare it to the financial area, like digital finance and the way people are managing their financial issues, that's also a very big problem, which we have been dealing with. A couple of countries we have been dealing with in Southern Sahara had problem with those. I don't want to name, of course, but we had problem to actually enroll the KYC systems in a good regulating regime, which has been a little bit of challenge for many of us as people who want to create products which are applicable and well used. In that case, I would say this is probably one of the biggest challenge for DLT related products and solutions which should be enrolled in the remote areas or areas which are underdeveloped because of low level of entities engaging with know your customer solutions and actually using those. So if there is not many other comments about this, I probably want to give the floor to Martina to say a little bit about the project that we all, you and Araklis are engaged in, just to keep up with the time. So I would say, go ahead and say a few words about our beloved DLT4ALL project.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, we used up all our times, and it is really due to thank the host of the table. The event was actually powered by DLT4ALL, which is a European funded project in which both EBAN and CERC participate, and where Edward contribute as external expert on EBAN side. DLT is an Erasmus Plus project that aims to develop a massive online open course about blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. The course comprises 8 modules. EBAN is responsible for module 8 about distributed autonomous organization, while CERC, the module relating to privacy and property rights. The project started in 2018, and the course is now complete, meaning that we fully developed the 8 modules, along with a set of case study, additional reading, and learning materials. Currently, we are piloting the trainings online to small groups, and the course will be fully accessible online pretty soon. You actually can already download the full syllabus on our website, which you can find here. And also you can participate to the trainings. For instance, both Edward and Iraklis are trainers in this session for sure. To participate to the trainings, go on our website, subscribe to our communications so that you can stay tuned with all our dissemination events and training events. I would say that this is all from my side. I think I hope you had good time, but I definitely did. I think it was a nice conversation, and there was a lot more to say. We will have follow-up events of this kind, so just stay tuned with us, and that's it. Yeah, hope you enjoy, and you can go back to the summit. Actually, there are still a couple of sessions going on relating to impact and another one that at this moment I don't recall. So thank you all for participating, and thanks especially to Edward and Iraklis for bringing their knowledge to the table. You have been great in animating this conversation.
Thank you too, Martina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
to
you to
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Bye,
thank you,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
everybody, and
Bye-bye.
next time. Bye. Shit.